On the news, President Buhari seeks fresh 5.5 billion naira loan to boost COVID-19 response and fund revised 2020 budget. Controversy as more Nigerian states record first COVID-19 cases. And Nigeria cuts monetary policy rates by 100 basis points. Many thanks for joining us on News Now on TV360 Nigeria. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked lawmakers at the National Assembly to approve a fresh $5.5 billion loan request. The president's directive was contained in a letter read at the Senate and House of Representatives on Thursday. In the letter, the president said the money will be used to support Nigeria's COVID-19 response and fund the revised 2020 budget. He added that part of the fund will also be used for the federal government's priority projects and to support the state governments. The Federal Executive Council earlier in May approved a downward review of the 2020 budget from 10.59 trillion naira to 10.52 trillion naira due to falling oil prices and a weak economy. Only 3 out of the 19 purported herbal cure for COVID-19 have passed preliminary stages and are worthy of further investigations. This is according to the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. Chairman of the task force and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, who revealed this, said the approved drugs will be subjected to further evaluation. The National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, had earlier announced that it is evaluating claims by some traditional experts who claim to have found drugs that can treat and cure COVID-19. NAFDAC is also evaluating the effectiveness of COVID Organics, a herbal drug developed by Madagascar to treat the novel coronavirus. The federal government says it has suspended further evacuation of Nigerians stranded abroad to allow the implementation of its new guidelines. Minister for Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Oyema, who announced this, said the new arrangement would require citizens returning from overseas to be tested at least 5 days before their departure. Oyema further noted that after the test abroad, those with positive results will be required to stay back for treatment, while only individuals who return negative will be allowed to board the flight. The minister added that samples of the returnees would be taken on arrival in the country and their passports confiscated while they would go on self-isolation in their homes. The development is a departure from the previous arrangement where evacuees were quarantined in hotels for 14 days. At least 1,000 Nigerians have been evacuated from the United Kingdom, the United States and the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Lebanon in the past weeks. 3 from this number, however, tested positive after arriving in the country. The federal government says it's considering morning and afternoon classes for reopening of schools across the country. Minister of State for Education said this while speaking at the Presidential Task Force briefing on Wednesday. He said the government is adopting caution before granting approval for the reopening of schools at all levels. Speaking further, he added that the country may adopt a 2-shift system of morning and afternoon classes to reduce population of students and the burden on infrastructure. The minister also debunked reports that the federal government has approved June 8th for the reopening of schools. He added that the federal government will consult world experts and the WHO before taking a final decision on the reopening of schools. The Kogi state government has disagreed with the NCDC on the emergence of 2 new COVID-19 cases in the state. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, had on Wednesday announced 389 new cases, of which 2 were from Kogi State. Reacting to this development, Kogi Health Commissioner Sako Audu described the figures as fictitious, arguing that Kogi remains COVID-19 free. He added that the government has developed full testing capacity and conducted hundreds of tests which have come back positive. Negative. In the meantime, the NCDC is yet to respond to the claims of the state government. With the new cases, Nigeria's COVID-19 toll now stands at 8,733, all confirmed in 35 states and the Federal Capital Territory. The NCDC also reported an increase in the number of fatalities from 249 to 254, while recovery surged by 116. Let's now move to Lagos, where the State Commissioner for Health, Akin Abayomi, has announced that Lagos might record up to 90,000 COVID-19 cases when its outbreak reaches its peak. Abayomi said this at a press briefing in Ikeja while highlighting efforts put in place by the state government to contain the pandemic. He said the government is closely monitoring other parts of the world and is adequately preparing for surprises.
It is difficult to predict the end of COVID-19. When we're going to see our peak is also dependent on the profile of the outbreak. We're watching what's happening across the world and using the pattern of the outbreak in different environments to try and reach some kind of modeling pattern to when we're going to peak and to when we're going to see the end of the outbreak. We believe that a period of 4 to 6 months is a reasonable period by which we should start to see a significant decline in the number of COVID-19 cases that we pick up in Lagos. And by that stage, many people would have been exposed to the virus, and therefore the virus will have less of an opportunity to infect people because they would have developed some degree of immunity to the virus, and that would signify the end of COVID-19. However, some countries are showing that COVID-19 is rebounding in the second or third waves. But of course, the second or the third waves will never be as large as the first wave. So we're definitely seeing in Lagos State the worst of the waves of COVID-19, which we're currently experiencing as active community spread. Once we've passed this stage, then we believe that we can settle down and continue business in Lagos, living with COVID-19 until we are eventually in a position to eliminate COVID-19 from Lagos State.
The World Health Organization says it has created an independent funding group named the WHO Foundation to expand support for its global health activities. At a media briefing, Tedros Ghebreyesus, WHO's Director General, said the launch of the WHO Foundation is a historic step that allows the WHO generate funding from sources it hasn't drawn from before, including the general public. He says the WHO is one of the few organizations of its kind that doesn't take donations from the general public, but it took a step in that direction earlier this spring when it launched the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund, which raised $214 million from 400,000 individuals and companies.
The creation of a WHO Foundation. The idea was to establish a way to generate funding for WHO from sources we haven't tapped before, including the general public. Until now, WHO has been one of the few international organizations which has not received donations from the general public. One of the greatest threats to WHO success is the fact that less than 20% of our budget comes in the form of flexible assessed contribution from member states, while more than 80% is voluntary contributions from member states and other donors, which are usually tightly earmarked for specific programs. In effect, that means WHO has little discretion over the way it spends its funds, almost 80% of its funds. We have been working hard to encourage member states to increase the proportion of flexible funds they give us. And we are very grateful for those countries that have given us greater flexibility in recent years. And there is improvement. But for WHO to fulfill its mission and mandate, there is a clear need to broaden our donor base and to improve both the quantity and quality of funding we receive, meaning more flexible funding.
2 Fulham players have tested positive for coronavirus in the latest round of testing. The Championship Club announced the developments on Thursday. The English Football League had earlier announced that it was carrying out tests on 1,030 players and staff between Monday and Wednesday. On Thursday, it revealed that 3 individuals tested positive from 2 clubs. At Premier League level, 4 individuals from 3 clubs were found to be COVID-19 positive in the testing round conducted on Monday and Tuesday, which included 1,008 tests. The small number of positive results is, however, a further boost to the championship restart plans, with the competition hoping to resume next month. We'll take a break here and we'll be right back with more stories on security matters. Do stay with us.
In the last 3 years, we have built a multi-purpose center, which is the envy of all in our constituency. And I can tell you that the people who are living there are already enjoying it.
Guy, do you think what this man just said is true? See, I seriously doubt. I'm sure it's one of those their silly lies.
And wait, do you know there's a way to find out if these things he's saying is true or not? This is the Construct app. It gives people like us a sure way to track implementation of constituency projects. It gives valid and verified information on location of projects, amounts allocated, amount funded, the level of job done, and even the profiles of concerned legislators. You and I can post directly on this app.
Are you serious?
This is the go-to app if you want to know how our Commonwealth is being expanded by the government.
Wow. Let's even see if what this man said is true. Show me.
The Construct app is developed by Other People Nigeria with support from USAID and is available on both Google Play Store and Apple Store.
And it's true.
Of course, I told you.
As the Armed Forces of Nigeria seeks to consolidate on the gains of its efforts against terrorism, banditry, and other forms of criminality within and around the country, the deployment of air assets has become a necessity. This is according to the Coordinator, Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche. Enenche was speaking at a press briefing in Abuja on the efforts and the progress of the Nigerian military. Enenche says the new strategy also aims to douse concerns from certain quarters in the northwest and north-central parts of the country over interstate movement by escaping armed bandits and other criminals.
As it were several years ago, 20, 30 years ago, criminals have graduated to using weapons that are beyond the normal area weapons of the general purpose machine gun, anti-aircraft guns. And that is the reason why, one of the major reasons why air interdiction using our ground air attack helicopters are now very, very important, and it has proved to be very effective from the northeast and even in the northwest. In this regard, air assets have been deployed to cover Kaduna, Niger, Nasarawa, and Kogi states. Those were some of the areas that concerns came from, amongst others. The Armed Forces of Nigeria, from the 6th up to yesterday, of course part of today, neutralized 188 Boko Haram and asswipe criminals in the northeast, killed 392 bandits in the northwest, and 20 bandits with the armed militia in the north-central parts of the country, amongst other successes recorded.
Chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Nasarawa State Chapter, Bishop Joseph Massin, has been abducted. The State Commissioner of Police, Bola Longe, who confirmed the incident, said the abductors of the CAN chairman went with him on motorcycles. According to the police, the gunmen struck at the residence of the CAN chairman at Bukan City area of Lafia at about midnight on Wednesday. Bola Longe added that the police have intensified surveillance to ensure his immediate release. Southeast governors have resolved their misunderstanding with the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, over the modalities for the constitution of community policing in the Southeast Geopolitical Zone of Nigeria. Governor David Umahi of Ebonyi State and chairman of the Southeast Governors Forum stated this after a virtual meeting of the governors with the Inspector General of Police. On Sunday, the governors had rejected a proposed template for setting up community policing in the region. During their last meeting on Sunday in Enugu, the governors had asked the 5 state houses of assembly in the region to enact state security laws that will give legal backing to the establishment of a regional security outfit in line with its joint security program for the zone. But after the virtual meeting yesterday, Governor Umahi explained that all misunderstanding has been resolved. The Lagos state government says buses with certain specifications will be deployed to replace Okada and tricycles in some areas of the state. On February 1st, the state government had enforced the restriction on commercial tricycles and motorcycles in 15 local councils. Speaking at a media briefing in Ikeja, the state capital, on Wednesday, Lagos Transportation Commissioner Frederick Oladede says more buses will be deployed by July to cushion the effect of the ban. He said the state government is working towards implementing a first mile and last mile mobility solution to help Lagosians navigate the state with ease.
The infrastructure for the Oshodi and Abule Egba has been completed. We are now developing just the depot, and we are set to start operation in July 2020. So that's the BRT from Oshodi to Abule Egba. We are currently discussing with several operators, and very soon an operator will be selected, and so we will bring relief to commuters along the Agege Motor Road. National level developed to ensure that the bus reform, which we have engaged in, takes off successfully. The Ikeja bus terminal is also operational, and we have started operation from Ikeja. So I'll read that out very soon. The Lagos Bus Services Limited agency, when we started, had 50 fleets. But during this operation, the fleet has been increased to 215, and they now operate on 14 routes from 4 routes when this administration came in. We are now beginning to develop the last mile network. So the last mile will replace what Okada as well as Keke Napep used to do in the past. And as you know, Keke Napep and Okada is not in our master plan, and so we need to replace it with decent modes of transport. So the last mile bus network has been developed. We have identified 285 last mile routes. So these are the routes that will take you from the main corridor to close to where you live or close to where you work, etc.
You're still watching News Now on TV360 Nigeria. We'll be right back with business stories as Oyin Adekunle stands by. Welcome back. Hello, Oyin.
Hi, Aneta.
So Oyin is bringing us business updates on the MPC meeting of the CBN. What's the update, Oyin?
Well, thank you, Aneta. The Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, of the Central Bank of Nigeria has reduced the monetary policy rate, MPR, from 12.5% to 13.5%. The CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, disclosed this while reading the communique at the end of the MPC meeting on Thursday. Emefiele also announced that the committee retained the cash reserve ratio at 27.5%, while the liquidity ratio was retained at 30%.
In its response to COVID-19 pandemic, however, the bank reduced interest rates associated with all CBN interventions from 9 to 5%. Increasing MPR at this stage will thus be counterintuitive and will result in upward pressure on retail market rates. committee maintained that although a sharp decline in output growth is expected during the second quarter of 2020 and maybe the third quarter, if the current stimulus initiatives are properly implemented, the economy will reverse to positive growth by the fourth quarter. Hence, the optimism on the part of the Monetary Policy Committee that the country may not slide into recession. In view of the foregoing, the committee decided by a unanimous vote to reduce monetary policy rate and to hold all other policy parameters constant. 7 members voted for a reduction of the monetary policy rate by 100 basis points, 2 members by 150 basis points, and 1 member by 200 basis points. In summary, the MPC voted to 1. Reduce the MPR to 12.5%, 2. Retain the asymmetric corridor of plus 200 and minus 500 basis points around the MPR, 3. Retain the CRR at 22.5%, and 4. Retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
As Nigeria records more COVID-19 cases, the nation's economy has continued to suffer a great loss as it gradually tilts towards recession. Economic experts have, however, predicted a subsequent contraction of the GDP as major sectors of the economy keeps recording losses. Adeshewa Odushoga now reports.
It is not business as usual for this market women. With no customer in sight, they sit in their almost deserted stalls, open for a more profitable day. They are blaming the economic impact of the coronavirus outbreak on their business. The market is dull. Business is not going as usual. People are complaining that they don't have money. It is when there is money that we market women will make profits. When there is no money, we can't make sales. Customers are not buying as much as they used to. They are all complaining that there is no money. Even we, the market women, are only trying. We don't have money. We are in the hands of our government. We are helpless. What can we do when our governments are deciding for us? We are pleading with the government to make everything easy. They should lift this lockdown. They should allow us to move from one place to another. They should allow us to go to our religious centers so that we can pray to God to help us. Nearly 4 years after it came out of its worst recession in 25 years, Nigeria's economy is again tilting towards the downturn. At the end of the fourth quarter of the year, the country was forced to partially shut its economy after it imposed a total lockdown on 3 major cities, namely Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun State, to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Although the economic shutdown had little or no effect on the country's GDP for fourth quarter of 2020, analysts have strongly predicted that there will be wide contractions in subsequent quarters of the year.
In subsequent quarters, we are likely to witness a much wider contraction of the economy. There have been predictions about recession, which means that the next subsequent quarters are likely to contract. We are likely to witness negative GDP growth. That is what is likely to happen. So that means that many of the sectors will go into negative territory, and that has implications, of course, for jobs. It has implications for revenue. It has implications for the sustainability of investment. It has implications for profitability of businesses. It has a whole lot of implications for the economy. Because with what we are witnessing now, oil price has dropped. That means that revenue has dropped significantly for government. So that means the government will not be in a position to spend as much as it used to. That means that the capacity of government at all levels to pay salaries will be affected. That means that the capacity of the government to fund the budget, to build infrastructure, will be affected.
The effect of the pandemic cut across almost all Nigeria's economic sectors, from a drop in diaspora remittances to a record low in oil prices and disruptions in supply chains, as well as low performances in the stock market. The federal government is, however, intensifying efforts to reawaken the economy with gradual easing of lockdown on affected sectors. Adishawa Dushoga, TV360, Lagos.
Well, let's take a pause here and return with stock market review. Sell-offs erased the slight gains investors on the NSE managed to gather in previous session, and at the close of trading today, the all-share index fell by 0.22%, while market capitalization equally dipped from 13.144 in previous session to 13.115 trillion naira today. Market heavyweights Dangote Cement and MTN led the pack of gainers with 2 naira 20 kobo. That's for MTN, and of course Guinness and GlaxoSmithKline also maintained the upward trend with an 80 kobo increase. Now, despite these gains, the weight pulled by 18 losers on the floor of the market dragged the market down today, with Flour Mill and equities in the financial services sector, Eco Bank, Zenith Bank and Guarantee Trust Bank recording the worst performances for today. And in summary, activity level on the floor of the market saw a decline. Volume and value of shares dropped today, and volume was from over 500 million in previous session to 348 million units. Value, of course, from 5.5 billion naira to 3.4 billion naira today. And moving on now to international markets, FTSE is rising above the 6,200 benchmark, and that's despite lukewarm start on Wall Street. U.S. markets also opened higher. Nikkei rose above a 200-day average, with investors snatching up deeply discounted stocks. And that's it from here. It's back to you now, Anita.
Thanks for the business updates. We're moving on. One person was shot dead with several buildings, including a construction site, burned as protest over the killing of George Floyd entered its second night and descended into chaos and looting. 46-year-old George Floyd died on Monday after a white police officer knelt on his neck for several minutes. The suburb of Oakdale, protesters gathered outside the home of Derek Chauvin, the police officer who was captured on the viral video with his knee on Floyd's neck. Local media reports that red paint was poured on Chauvin's driveway and the word killer was written on his garage door. Chauvin and 3 other officers involved in Floyd's arrest have been fired, but prosecutors want criminal charges brought against them. In sports, Ghana Raw has extended his contract as Super Eagles head coach with Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, for another 2 years. NFF President Amaju Pinnick said the Franco-German, whose previous 2-year contract ends in June, has decided to continue with the national team until 2022. Raw's new contract begins on July 1st, 2020 and ends December 31st, 2022. Pinnick said the NFF had always had confidence in Raw's ability to move the national team forward, particularly ahead of the 2022 FIFA World Cup and the Nations Cup. And that's it on News Now on TV360 Nigeria. Thank you for watching.